welcome to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. Now this is a virtual tour, so I'm not really there. However, I wish I was there and I wish you were there with me. This is the newest memorial on the National Mall. It was dedicated in 2011, and it's the only memorial on the mall that is not dedicated to either a war or a president. Now, we all know that Martin Luther King Jr. was an active civil rights leader back in the 1960s, and he was known for his peaceful protests. Well, he was born in Atlanta, Georgia. His father was a minister, and his grandfather also was a minister. And they lived just down the street from the Ebenezer Baptist Church where his father and grandfather preached at. He was very smart as a kid in school. He was able to skip 2 grades. And he started college at the age of 15. Now, he graduated Morehouse College, and then he went to seminary school in Pennsylvania. And then after that, he decided he wanted his doctorate. So he went to Boston College in Massachusetts, and this is where he met his wife, Coretta Scott. Now, in 1955, there was a young woman named Rosa Parks. She was a 42-year-old seamstress. She had just gotten off work. She was tired. She got on the bus and sat down, and then she refused to give up her seat to a white man. Well, she was arrested for this. Hard to believe if you're younger and you haven't studied about the civil rights yet. This was part of what was happening in the South because of the Jim Crow laws. The black people and the white people were forced to be segregated. They had separate drinking fountains, separate bathrooms. They had to worship in separate churches, go to separate schools, and sometimes they couldn't go to city parks. They just weren't afforded the same kind of privileges that white people had. And so like I said, Rosa Parks was arrested for this. Now later in life, she did go on and she continued her fight in civil rights. So she was another active civil rights leader, you would say. Now, Martin Luther King gets involved in this, and he organizes the Montgomery Bus Boycott. The bus boycott lasted 385 days. So this was a good thing. It did bring about transportation change. So there were other events along the way that are memorable and that most people should know about. In 1960, in Greensboro, North Carolina, there was the lunch counter sit-ins. 4 young black men decide that they're going to Woolworths and they're going to ask for a meal. So they sit down at the lunch counter, and of course they're denied service because they're black. So they just sit there. They sit there till closing time. Well, then the next day they come back and a few more people join them, and then a few more people the next day. And soon this incident catches on across the South, and there were lunch sit-ins in several different places. Now, these people that were doing the lunch sit-ins it was more organized, and they were taught how to respond against the brutality that they would be facing. So, somebody might spit on you, somebody might throw their milkshake on you, somebody might hit you, they'll probably try to pull you off your stool, they're gonna call you names. But you have to sit there peacefully and take it because you cannot retaliate. And so I don't know about you, but can you imagine how difficult that must have been? And, they were beaten and hit, and they just took it. Then there was, in 1961, there was the Freedom Riders, group of black and white people left Washington, D.C., headed to New Orleans, and the bus pulls into a station in Alabama, and at this station there's about 200 angry white people there. They've got lead pipes, they've got sticks. So the bus driver says, we're not stopping here, and he continues on. But the angry mob gets in their cars and they follow the bus. The bus gets 2 flat tires. And then they throw in a bomb into the bus. And so the people are trying to escape the bus. And as they're coming out of the bus, the angry mob is throwing things at them and hitting them and beating them. Then you have, in 1965, you have the march to Selma. And Martin Luther King was involved in this. And as they crossed over the Pettus Bridge, they were greeted by a force of police brutality. There was a lot of police brutality that was happening back then, and they were tear gassed, and they had sticks, or cop sticks and whips, and so and the protesters were not, they were being not peaceful. So those are the things that were happening. Now, Martin Luther King died in April 4th at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. He was giving a speech to the sanitation workers when he was assassinated. Now, at the memorial, as you walk through, you're coming through the entrance, you'll look what looks like a mountain that's divided in half. And out of the center of the mountain is there a stone pushed forward. And the quote is, "Out of a mountain of despair, there is a stone of hope." MLK is on the stone of hope. He is carved, but he is not completed. So about waist down, it turns kind of back into stone. And my interpretation of this is that our work with civil rights is not completed. His work is not done yet. So another thing I like to point out is that he's looking directly at Thomas Jefferson across the tidal basin. And Thomas Jefferson, of course, we all know he wrote our Declaration of Independence, but in his original draft, he wanted to abolish slavery. And of course, the founding fathers are like, we can't do this yet. We are trying to get our own freedom. You know, some of them agreed with him. Some of them knew that they couldn't have their way of life if they did that. But we'll save that for future generations. Well, I think the founding fathers would be disappointed to know how long it's taking. Also at the memorial, you will find different quotes surrounding the statue on the walls. And he had given many different speeches, and these are quotes from some of his many speeches. He was a gifted orator and talented writer. Most people remember his most famous speech was I Have a Dream speech at the Lincoln Memorial on the March for Washington. He had also spoken there once before, but this is the one everybody remembers. So I hope you learned a little bit about Martin Luther King, and I hope you will continue his fight for peaceful resolution of some of the disgraces that we're going through right now, and keep the movement going, everybody. We can do this. Thank you. Bye.